Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. I'm Andia, a licensed addiction counselor, and along with my co-host, Laura Kissman, a quantum nutritionist, we will be inviting expert scientists, clinicians, survivors, and thrivers to distill their pearls of wisdom attained from applying quantum biology to their fields of research and everyday lives. Our goal is to bring you easy to understand principles and practices about the study of light, water, and magnetism so you can take your health into your own hands.
Welcome back to Quantum Healthy. And today we have a very special guest, Canadian. So it's exciting for me, but she's actually from out west in Calgary, as I understand it. Justine Stenger. She is a nutritionist, both conventionally, holistically, and functionally medicine trained. That's in my books a rock star, and is also a trained therapeutic chef. She is also a certified Bredesen practitioner. For those that don't know what that is helping people with neurodegenerative decline. So our older folks who are having dementia and Alzheimer's. And she's also a certified gluten practitioner. She currently specializes in cell membrane medicine and works primarily with patients who suffer with neurological conditions, mast cell activation syndrome, you may have heard of MCAS, Lyme disease, and autoimmune disease. Justine has worked beside Dr. Bruce Hoffman, I understand he's in Calgary as well, for the past 10 years and has supported hundreds of Dr. Hoffman's chronic complex illness patients nutritionally. She has studied quantum biology like we have and is applying it in her practice as well. So welcome, Justine.
Thank you.
Did I get all of that right? Is there anything that I missed?
No, that's perfect. Yeah.
Perfect.
That's perfect.
Okay. Really, we would just love to hear how did you first get into the health space and decide to study all of that, because that was a lot of studying. And then, and really, how did you get into quantum biology? Because that's really the focus of our podcast.
Yeah. So I'll try to keep this short because my story is quite long. I actually was originally introduced to environmental medicine when I was about 22 years old, and I had got very, very sick after living in a moldy basement suite during university. So I played basketball for the University of Alberta. I was a very high level athlete for basically my entire life from the age about eight years old to 22. And so I was chronically overtraining. I lived in a gym under fluorescent lights. I was not that person that was spending a lot of time outside because of my commitment to athletics. So I got very sick at about 22 years old in my second year of university and was trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And of course, went to so many different doctors and just got prescribed antidepressants. That was basically the prescription. You're depressed, so take this antidepressant, and if this doesn't work, try these additional 5. And so I intuitively knew that something was really going on, that I wasn't a depressed person. I had never dealt with depression my entire life. And so I ended up getting connected to Dr. Stephen Jenis, who has now written many papers on environmental medicine. But when he was first starting out, he was still a GP. He was still acting as a family medical doctor. And so I saw him, and he did a whole bunch of testing on me and helped open my eyes to environmental toxins and the role they play in our health. And so, or in our ill health. And he talked to me a lot about mold and history of mold exposure and all of that. And that really piqued my interest. He used to offer these monthly lectures at his clinic that were on a specific topic around environmental medicine. And I started going to those lectures with my mom. And that was really my first introduction to this whole new world. That was the first time, honestly, in my life that I actually enjoyed learning. So I had gone to university because I was an athlete. I had no interest in education whatsoever. I was like, I just am here to play basketball and basically just take these courses that I have to while I'm here. And that was kind of my experience all through school too. I was not interested in academics. And that's the story that I told myself too, right? It's like, I'm not really interested in school. And so that was the first time that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry for this knowledge. I just want to learn more about this. So in school, I had flopped around a lot. I had done a couple of years of nursing. I did nutrition and physical education as my undergrad and basically finished that degree. Didn't want to go into dietetics. And so asked an academic advisor, what is the quickest way for me to get out of here? And she said, well, you have all of your credits to be a teacher. You just need to do your practicum if you want to teach high school. So I did my practicum for a year and started teaching that. I got my first teaching job in Calgary that following year and taught high school for a year and 2 months and cried every single day all the way to school and every single day all the way home. I hated it so much. I cannot even express to you. It was just so out of alignment. And that's what pushed me to go back to school. I thought, you know what? I want to go and learn something and do something that I actually love. And I had always been really interested in, I mean, considering my undergrad, I was interested in nutrition. I really was curious about understanding food as medicine. I was always reading like herbs and spices as medicine, like all these alternative books, and was fascinated by them. So I moved to Boulder, Colorado, and did my holistic nutrition and therapeutic chef education there, and came back to Calgary after that was completed and connected with Dr. Bruce Hoffman. And he's really connecting with him and getting integrated into his practice and learning about how he practices medicine, which is incredible. If you haven't looked into his work, there's really not a doctor that I've ever come across that is practicing through like true whole body healing. And it was through learning that I wanted to continue to learn more. And so I pursued my training through the Institute for Functional Medicine. So I completed that training back in about 2017 and did all kinds of other things on the way, like my GAPS practitioner training and my gluten practitioner training, lots of little certifications. And it was really just, I couldn't get enough of this information. I was just so excited to learn. So my credentials in that long duration of time that I was engaging in education was not necessarily because I had this like specific focus. It really felt like I was kind of going all over the place just because I was really wanting to learn as much as I could. And then after doing my functional medicine training and working, with patients or with clients for a number of years and really struggling with my own health, I had at, the age of about 30, developed a really severe mast cell activation syndrome and was living with chronic brain fog and fatigue and just overall feeling so unwell and trying every single supplement. You're looking for like the next thing. You're like, okay, well, there must be something that I'm not taking that I need to be taking that's going to help me get well. And it was obviously that's not the answer. It wasn't the solution. And so through that period of time, I got more and more exposed to phospholipids and fatty acids and started taking the body biophospholipid complex and their essential fatty acid blend and noticed such an improvement in my own health. And then started to see like all these patients' labs, when we would apply lipid replacement therapy to these labs, we'd see these massive transformations in their health. And that was the first door that opened that led me to understanding that the human body is this amazing healing machine. And that if we just give it what it needs to heal, miraculous healing occurs. And then I was super intrigued around fatty acids and phospholipids and just learning more about them. And then I ended up pursuing my education in that. And I ended up being mentored by an amazing lipid researcher for years. And now, I mean, I'm still so even with the introduction to quantum biology and being really interested in all of that, I still am just in awe of all the roles of phospholipids and fatty acids in the cell membrane and the interaction with the membrane and the exclusion zone water and mitochondrial medicine. And so that's really where I've taken my career now, and helping people to understand the mitochondria and how we can restore the mitochondria using essential inputs that the body needs, right? And not getting lost in the woods with every single pill and potion and powder, and just really understanding that the body needs certain nutrients, and also the defect is never in the individual. The defect is always in the environment. And so when we understand that, and then we pair getting you in an environment that is conducive to healing, and we give all of these healing inputs, I call them salugenesis based on Dr. Robert Navio's work, just the most miraculous healing can occur. And that's
How do you cellugenesis? As in cell, the cell?
Salu, like SALU, Genesis.
Okay, you got to explain that. I don't understand. What would that mean?
So salugenesis is basically going to be those healing inputs. I mean, that would be the easiest for people to understand, that it's those healing inputs that we need to restore the health cycle. That's Dr. Robert Navio's work, where the cell mitochondria go into that cell danger response. And so he speaks about pathogenesis as all of the contributors that are causing someone to get sick. And then salugenesis are those healing inputs that are required to restore the health cycle.
Got it. Okay. We definitely want to talk about cell danger response. So we'll hold that thought. One of the reasons I want you to hold the thought is because I think for our listeners, we've not really talked about fat or fats and cell membranes and even the inner mitochondrial. They know what a mitochondria is, but they may not know much about the inner and outer mitochondrial membranes. So would love you to kind of give the 30,000 view on fats and maybe tell us what a phospholipid is, what a fatty acid is, and maybe if you can talk about what's essential, like, an essential fat versus a non-essential fat. And maybe I know we're going to get to best ratios at some point, but yeah, that kind of 30, I think we should start maybe there before we get into any more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to. So phospholipids are the main. Do you want me to actually break down like what the molecule is, or
No, like
Okay.
we'll lose them, I think, if we get into
Just too much of
the
the biochemistry.
biochemistry too much.
So phospholipids are the main components of our cell membrane. So we have about 70 trillion cells in the body, and we have roughly about 200 different cell types. And we have about 500 trillion mitochondria, and some people even say more. And of course, that's going to vary from individual to individual as well. Now, the common denominator is that every single one of those cells and every single one of those cell types and every single one of those mitochondria all have these biological membranes, and actually every organelle within your cell. So when you think about the peroxisome and the endoplasmic reticulum and the ribosomes, if an organelle doesn't have a biological membrane, it is interacting with one. And so these membranes become really significant. And so if we don't have adequate amounts of these phospholipids to support the structure and the function of the cell membrane, our membrane is going to be impaired. And I'm going to focus primarily on the mitochondrial membrane, because if your listeners are familiar with oxidative phosphorylation, that occurs on the phosphatidylethynolamine membrane. And the phosphatidylethynolamine membrane is housing, it's actually making another phospholipid called the cardiolipin. So these big words are not important. What's important is that you understand that these phospholipids are really like housing these protein complexes that are what these electrons get transferred passed along so that you can make water and you can make ATP. And so if we have a breakdown of that membrane, we're not going to have efficient transfer of those electrons from protein complex to protein complex. And I mean, basically, because the membrane is the control center of the whole cell, that outer membrane, and these membranes on the organelles play such a significant role, it's basically determining whether the cell can do the work that it was intended to do or not. The phospholipids become really, really kind of forefront. And so phospholipids are made in the body. They're made primarily through the ingestion of essential fatty acids. So if you're familiar with essential fatty acids, and the phospholipids and the essential fatty acids they're basically a team, because we need essential fatty acids to make phospholipids. And then the essential fatty acids are really becoming part of the phospholipid molecule that's making up your membrane. So say you consume olive oil, that olive oil is in a triglyceride form. So triglyceride means there's a glycerol backbone and there's three fatty acid tails. We're going to digest that down into a monoace glycerol and then a free fatty acid through the process of digestion. When it's in a free fatty acid form, that's when we're going to pull that into a phospholipid molecule, or pull that into the phospholipid bilayer of a cell. And then in the body, we have a number of different steps that occurs where we make phospholipids that primarily happens in the endoplasmic reticulum. And
Okay.
those phospholipids go to support the structure and the function of our membranes. So super significant, right? So we have essential nutrients that we need. So a lot of people will probably know that choline is an essential nutrient, and we need choline in order to make phosphatidylcholine.
I think of
We,
eggs, right? Eggs and egg
yeah,
yolks. Yeah.
eggs actually have phosphatidylcholine in them.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a big difference between, we usually group choline and phosphatidylcholine under one umbrella, like it's as the same thing, or that we use them synonymously.
Okay.
They're actually not. They're actually two completely different molecules.
Okay.
But yes, we do need choline to synthesize phosphatidylcholine. We would
Okay.
need ethanolamine to synthesize phosphatidylethanolamine. We need serine to synthesize phosphatidylserine.
Serine.
We need
Okay.
inositol to synthesize phosphatidylinositol. And those are the four main phospholipids that are found in the membrane.
Okay.
And then we have four main fatty acids that are found in the membrane. So our four most predominant fatty acids are going to be linoleic acid, arachidonic acid, oleic acid, and DHA. And those four main fatty acids, of course, we have other ones as well, but those make up the majority of the concentration within the membrane. Now, depending on the cell type, I mentioned we have 200 different cell types. So depending on the cell type, it's going to determine what fatty acids are actually found in the membrane. So a neuron is going to be really rich in DHA.
Right.
Cells in the retina, super rich in DHA.
Yep.
Liver cells, really high in linoleic acid. Our immune cells, really rich in linoleic acid. So as you can see, we have different cell types, and they're going to have different concentrations of fatty acids. But if you notice that 3 out of the 4 fatty acids that I listed, linoleic, arachidonic, oleic, and DHA, 3 of those are actually essential fatty acids. So this is where I'm very passionate about helping people to understand fatty acids, because I've seen them when we optimize fatty acids and we optimize ratios, we see such amazing improvements in health. And again, it goes back to what I said before. These are essential nutrients. And so if you're depleted in them, if you don't have optimal amounts and you don't have optimal ratios, the body's not able to do the work that it was intended to do, because we can't synthesize essential fatty acids in the body, but we can synthesize all the other fatty acids in the body. So, there's a lot of emphasis on things like saturated fat is so, and I'm not against saturated fat by any means,
No.
but there's a lot of emphasis on just consume saturated fats, whether that's through, a carnivore diet or a ketogenic diet. And people have really demonized any of the polyunsaturated fatty acids, specifically on the omega-6 side.
It's so true. There's so much demonization of, like, I follow Dr. Mercola. I read his letter a lot, and he's really hard on linoleic acid to the point where I'm like, no, don't, and don't eat this. And I've even got tables of nuts and seeds and oils that are like, only have the lowest. But that's where I'd love for you to tell us about some of the misinformation about linoleic acid.
Yeah. And it's funny because that's basically what every single person that I talk to says. Well, Dr. Mercola
Oh,
says.
I didn't want to mention his name, but
And I'm
yeah.
like, okay, well, Dr. Mercola and I need to have a little talk. I've actually tried, but that's another vein. So again, it's just a misunderstanding of, and with all due respect, I mean, we all have our area of expertise, and it's really just a misunderstanding of the role that linoleic acid plays in the body. And also, I think as well that it's a little bit of a misunderstanding, Laura, between the difference between an oxidized form of linoleic acid, which is rife in the food system, right? It's everywhere. So if people are eating anything out of a package or a box or a bag, or they're eating in restaurants, they're going to be getting loads of these oxidized oils, which are rich in linoleic acid. But when we're talking about functional forms of linoleic acid from raw egg yolks, from organ meats, from things like raw seeds, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, hemp seeds, black cumin seed oil, which we know has been used in like Ayurvedic medicine for, I don't know how many hundreds of years, as medicine, that's when we have to start really questioning, okay, how did this narrative come into fruition? And how did it get so twisted? And that's, of course, my theory. I think it became really twisted just because of what we've done to these oils that are rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids. And so now, because medicine is reductionist, And many people have a very black and white approach to things. So they think, oh, these seed oils they're oxidized, they're harmful.
Right.
And so now we're just going to label linoleic acid as this really harmful essential fatty acid. And the other thing as well is that there's this narrative that a lot of people share around linoleic acid getting converted to arachidonic acid, and arachidonic acid is inflammatory. So we want to limit linoleic acid because we don't want it to convert to arachidonic acid.
That
Well,
was Holistic Nutrition 101. That's what I learned in school.
so that is so wildly inaccurate. And
Right.
so linoleic acid, the conversion from linoleic acid to arachidonic acid requires two enzymes. The delta D6
right.
desaturase enzyme that's going to take linoleic acid to gamma linolenic acid to dihomo-gamma linolenic acid. Then we need the delta D5 desaturase enzyme to take dihomo-gamma linolenic acid into arachidonic acid. That conversion from the parent oil to arachidonic acid is 0.5 to 2.5%. I think the highest I've ever seen it is 5%. So this is a very, very, very mild pathway. This is not a major pathway. And so that whole narrative, I think, needs to be, changed. And as long as
Updated.
people understand that, also understanding that your body can make arachidonic acid on demand. So it's correlated with, of course, this is never diagnostic, but this is one of the markers that's correlated with things like cancer, because when we have low levels of linoleic acid and high levels of arachidonic acid, what is that telling us? It's telling us that our body is making cell membranes. So that's why it's correlated, with things like cancer. So it's a very, very minor pathway. And if you go back to what I said a few minutes ago, arachidonic acid is one of the 4 main fatty acids that's found within our cell membranes. And we focus a lot on DHA when it comes to brain health, and I'm not diminishing the importance of DHA. And linoleic acid and arachidonic acid are the main fatty acids that are found within myelin, within our white matter. So this is, again, just a really beautiful example of the very black and white approach that we take to not only this, but all things in medicine. There is not one fatty acid that is bad. They are all important. They wouldn't be found in the body if they weren't important. We definitely have ones that are higher in priority because of the fact that your body can't synthesize them. And if you go back to your very first nutrition class, what did we learn in like Nutrition 101? It's essential nutrients. When you have a deficiency in essential nutrients, the result is disease and death.
Exactly.
And so to demonize an essential nutrient is wildly, wildly bizarre to me.
Wow, we've gone
But
wrong.
again, I think it just comes down to the fact that we have destroyed so many of these plants, turned them into really, really harmful oils in our food system.
Yeah.
And so that's where the confusion lies. It's the same thing too, Laura and Andrea, with avocado oil as well. Because, so many people are told that avocado oil is a healthy oil. Well, if you look on the bottle of avocado oil, every bottle that I've seen says this is a high temperature cooking oil, smoke point 425 degrees Fahrenheit or 450 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right.
Well, when you understand fatty acids, you know that oleic acid, which is the main fatty acid that's found in avocado oil, has a double carbon bond and has a smoke point of about 300 to 325 degrees, give or take. So what do you think has been done to that avocado oil in order for you to be able to heat that oil to 450 degrees without it smoking?
It's so altered. I used to actually do this demo with clients. I bought some cold pressed actual avocado oil, and it's this really unusual green color, and it doesn't smell, honestly, I don't know, maybe it didn't smell very good. I didn't like the taste. I stopped buying it, but I used to just show it to clients to go, okay, here's this processed avocado oil. Like, what is similar about these two? Like, nothing. So I'm not trusting this clear, non-odor, like no odor oil, this avocado oil. I don't see it as a health food. Maybe it is safer to cook than olive oil. That's what people, argue, but
Well, it's safer because it's not going to smoke at a high temperature. And in
right.
order for you to do that, you have to manipulate the fatty acid chain. You also, I mean, if you look at the research on avocado oil processing, they use hexane. That's how they extract the oil. So
So that's
it's
a toxic oil, basically. The
it's a
body
toxic
sees it as a
oil.
toxin, right?
It's when you hexane is a carcinogen.
Great.
So it's again these ideas that we get because somebody says, you know, I mean, a lot of this is marketing stuff, right? Because there's
Yeah,
no, you can say whatever you want. I mean,
right.
nobody's
Yeah,
really like,
in Dr. Lustig's book, he makes the point. Oh my gosh, it's called metabolical. He talks about like the side of our food, it has the ingredients when really what we should also know is the process by which it went through, but that's
right,
never going to be on the label.
exactly.
And the process, and that's what you're talking about right now is the process. So I just wanted to point out that because I've talked about it in the past that he points that out. So
Yeah. And you know, it's, again, I live and breathe what I teach, and I am not, I don't sugarcoat things. And I also, you know, people have to be active participants in their health if they want to get well. If they value their health, they will be an active participant in it. And in being an active participant, it means that you cannot just go today. We don't live in a day and an age when you can go to a grocery store and just pick something up off the shelf and think that it's okay to eat. Like, we need to be sourcing food. I get all of my food from a farmer out of the back of his van. That is how like hardcore I am about the food.
Nice.
Wow.
I'm
And
impressed.
I don't know the last time I've been to a grocery store. Truly. I just don't, because everything that we eat in this house is either grown on the earth, whether it's grown in our garden or someone else's garden, or it's raised on the earth, and that's it. There's no ingredients to look at. And that's why it's like whole food doesn't have an ingredient list, period.
No, can we just
Exactly.
go back to the cell membrane for a sec? Dr. Bruce Lipton, so a lot of people have heard of him. We talked about him in our last podcast, actually, with Rachel Maurice. And I famously remember him talking about he wouldn't spell membrane the way we would. He would
Right.
spell it BRAIN. And
Yeah.
could you explain why it's so important to look at health from the perspective of the cell membranes and why,
Yeah.
like,
So,
because you made
yeah.
a comment earlier about it being the control center of the cell, but some people may be going, what? I thought the nucleus was the control center.
Yeah. So actually, so I would probably say now, based on what I know of the mitochondria, that the mitochondria are the control center of the cell. And and the
Oh,
mitochondria, we do know the mitochondria are regulating how our DNA transcribe, right? So epigenetically. And that's a whole very interesting area of science that I've been studying, largely Dr. Doug Wallace's work,
okay.
where we spend all this money on studying DNA, like
I know.
trillions of dollars a year in the
I
US.
know.
And those true genetic diseases are 1.1 to 5% of the diseases that we see today. So we're putting all this money into studying diseases that account for like a very, very small percentage of the disease that we see, and the rest of it is mitochondrial diseases. These are mitochondrial diseases because when we get mitochondrial dysfunction, that is directly impacting, you know, how our genes transcribe. So if we can optimize the mitochondria, and we can optimize the mitochondria through, you know, obviously there's many things that we need to do, and you know this through understanding the power of sunlight and the power of grounding and the power of exclusion zone water and all the things that we can do to build that healthy exclusion zone water in the cell. We also, what's not talked about in quantum biology is that we still require essential nutrients that are providing the cell with the structure that it needs and the function to be able to function properly. So you can't go out in the sun and lay in the grass all day for years and years and years on end and eat like a vegan diet where you're not getting any of these phospholipids and expect to be able to have the materials that you need to build healthy cells.
I'm so
You know,
glad you're bringing this up. It's needed in the quantum space.
it is. And it's, yeah, thank you for saying that, because I feel that too. And I feel like there's a lot of people that say things like nutrition doesn't matter. Food is
Mhm.
information. Of
Mhm.
course, nutrition matters. You know how many people that I've worked with that have changed their diet according to my recommendations, and that alone has improved their MSQ from like 128 to 16? That alone. And of course, I'm always, you know, I don't, everything that I teach is around, of course, like the phospholipids and the fatty acids are a piece, and education around how these are essential nutrients. And the circadian biology, the light and the dark cycles, the harm of blue light, like all of that stuff, of course, is taught. And I can say that before I even knew any of this, and I was just focusing on membrane medicine and nutrition to support cellular health, I saw massive improvements in patients' health by just making some of those changes. So there is something to just giving your body the nutrients that it needs to do the work, right?
Which is 30% of the energy of the body. Like when we always say like food is kind of 30% of the electrons for the body, and the
But it's
rest
more
is
than
from.
that. It's more than that too, right, Laura? Because it's that food is actually like carrying with it energy, information,
Right.
right? And so that's where like the food piece, yes, all food is getting broken down into electrons. It's going to enter the electron transport chain. And it, depending on the food that we eat, is 100% determining the information that is being given to the mitochondria to adjust metabolism.
Yes.
And this has been really interesting for me to study. Again, this is like Robert Navio's work around the cell danger response and the different.
Tell us what you mean by cell danger response.
Yeah. Okay. So before I jump ahead, I just want to, you asked about the membrane and I didn't even answer your question. So
you went on a great tangent. I love it.
And so, well, yeah, pause on the cell danger response, and I'll get to that in just one second. Bruce Lipton's work, for anyone who's interested, he basically studied that when you remove the nucleus from the cell, we thought that the nucleus was the control center of the cell. When you remove the nucleus from the cell and the membrane stays intact, the cell stays alive for weeks after. So that was kind of like throwing that whole theory on its head. Well, the cell doesn't die when the nucleus is removed. So it can't be like that ultimate control center. So the membrane, when we think about the cell membrane, that outer cell membrane, we have to think about everything that's on the cell membrane. So think about your proteins and your peptides that are embedded in that membrane and your ion channels and your receptors. So what do you think would happen when we improve the structure and the function of the cell membrane in regards to overall health? You are improving the function of the proteins and the peptides. You're improving those ion channels. You're improving those receptors. And so that's where when people ask me, like, who would you recommend take the Body Bio PC and the balance oil? And it's like, who would I not recommend them?
Everyone.
Like, everyone. Right. Because if you have cells, you're a mammal, you're made up of cells. Those cells are made up of phospholipids and they're an essential nutrient. And again, just to be very, very accurate, if you look them up, they're going to be called a conditionally essential nutrient. I have moved them into the essential nutrient category because we live in an environment today that we have so many assaults on our cell membrane that there is no way in hell that our body is going to be able to keep up with the demand in synthesizing these lipids to support all the damage. Like maybe somebody that's living in the most pristine area of the world that's spending all their time on the beach and in the water.
And doesn't have a cell phone.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
But yeah,
Thank you for saying that.
Most of us aren't living there. And I know that you've talked about the non-native EMF piece with a past guest, but the impact that these non-native EMFs have on our cells is insane. It's insane.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, insane. And especially like how the ignorance that's out there right now with people, with everybody, including now our seniors, and down to teenagers and young kids having a cell phone, and they don't know that by just touching some simple buttons on their phone, they could be reducing the radiation and damage that they don't even know they're doing. It's definitely one of my missions.
Yeah, Laura, it's something, me too. I mean, it's something that makes me so righteously angry that I almost have a hard time talking about it because this is like the most volatile. This is on airplane mode, by the way. Like it's always
mine's somewhere. Yeah.
But this is like the most volatile. Oh my gosh! And for some reason,
it's not.
It was just the Wi-Fi, so now it's on airplane mode. This is like the most volatile toxin that, and people we just don't see it through that lens. Like this is directly damaging your cell membranes, like every single, like stealing electrons from the body, completely depleting our charge. Like, what do you think we need to be healthy? We need that really strong electrical charge. This is directly damaging our membrane potential. Like that voltage.
Wow. Constant spending of our energy just going out. If it was money,
Yeah.
Our energy was money. It's just an all day spend. How are we going to fill up our bank account again? Which is
Yeah,
where quantum biology comes in.
it's funny that you say that because I always use the analogy that when I talk about phospholipids and fatty acids on like a training, I
Okay.
often use the analogy when we get sick, when we no longer have what we need to go in and repair damage to our membranes, we can think of our biochemistry is just like our bank account, right? If we were to only take withdrawals out of our bank account for the duration of our life, most of us, unless we were trust fund babies, are going to be bankrupt. We're going to file for bankruptcy. And our biochemistry is the exact same way, but we don't really look at it through that lens. It's like we go through our whole life just taking out withdrawals, and we never pay attention to putting those valuable deposits back into the biochemical bank account. And I always say, like, this is where phospholipids and fatty acids play such a significant role in like putting that really powerful deposit in the biochemical bank account. So you actually have some of that reserve capacity to go in and restore damage. But yeah, with the cell phones, it's just, the number of people that walk around with them on their body all day, the number of people that are putting headphones in their ears. I just did on Instagram on this the other day because all these people are like, yeah, no, I don't use Bluetooth headphones. I use wired ones. It's like, no.
Are they air tube headset?
They're not, no, like just wired. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
I educated on air tubes, but even with air tubes, it's like, I don't even feel comfortable putting anything on my brain that is
I
connected
know.
to technology.
The only ones
So
I'll use are ones that are the wires at least shielded. I feel a little bit better with that, but it's still not ideal. I
no, and
know.
it's like I reserve that for when I'm on an airplane and I want to listen to a podcast or, it's
Mhm.
very, very small periods of time where I can't, if you're out in public or something and you get a phone call and I actually don't ever get phone calls because my phone's always on airplane mode. But like
You
when you
sound like me.
like having to make a call, an emergency call or something in public, yeah, then pop in air tube headphones. But that's still not something that I would recommend doing, daily. And a lot of these people are working on a computer all day connected with headphones to their head, to their head. It's just, and they
And I
just don't know.
Yeah, they don't even question it.
Don't know.
On the AirPods, I've heard you in another podcast, and the way you described it, I thought I'd love for my family to hear this. They're actually pretty much on board, which is good. They're more aware. They've heard me nag them over the years. My first workshop on EMFs was in 2015, so in nutrition school actually. And so maybe you can explain it better, but you talked about how why would you ever put one like you're putting one in one ear and then in the other, and then you're basically blasting your brain, right? Because you're
You're
connecting this Bluetooth
shooting
signal.
you're
You're
shooting a
sh-
transmission signal through your brain.
It's mad
I mean,
it's madness.
I probably shouldn't even go on record saying this, but I truly believe that this is a main driver of neurodegenerative disease. I really, really do. I think that the EMFs play a massive role outside of, I mean, I would also put blue light up there because of the damage to the melanopsin receptor. And I can't even tell you how many papers I've read around melanopsin damage and
Mhm.
Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, Lewy body dementia. I mean, it's scary.
And what
So
are what are our seniors doing? They're if they're arthritic and they can't move as much, they sit and they get entertained by TV all day long. I have
yeah,
them in my life.
also, Laura, it's like it's neurodegenerative disease is not an old person's disease anymore. I see cognitive decline in 35-year-olds. I see cognitive
Interesting.
decline in like it's scary what's happening.
Wow.
I saw, I've just recently saw a mocha of 26 in a 20, I think she's 26 or 27 years old. It's a
Mocha's
mild
the
impairment score.
right. It's the test we give seniors to see if they can still drive and
It's
to
yeah,
test for
it's a
dementia, right?
yeah, it's one of the tests for cognitive decline. It's the Montreal Cognitive Assessment.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So this is, the idea that people get like neurodegenerative disease takes decades to be diagnosed.
Mhm.
Decades. You
Mhm.
don't just get it when you're old.
Mhm.
You engage in things that are not giving your body the signals that it needs to optimize cognitive function. You damage those cells, you damage those mitochondria to the point where your brain's not able to work anymore.
which is like, what is it, 70%? Doug Wallace says, in order to see that symptom, it's often damaged by 70%, the
70, and I think
70% of the
80,
mitochondria.
yeah, and I think that's the heteroplasmy, right? Yeah, and I think it's
Right.
80% actually for disease to manifest.
80%, okay.
I think 70% is that cusp where you start to have symptoms.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
how
I
amazing
just
the body
saw
is.
that slide the other day. You're right. 70 and then 80% for disease to manifest.
Disease manifest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That in itself is, I mean, studying Doug's work has been, I mean, I've always been really, I don't know what it is, but I've been like, I'm so fascinated by the mitochondria. I just think they're like the most amazing little organelles.
Can I ask how you've studied his work? Have you read books or papers, or does he have a courses?
I have listened to every single lecture that I can find of his,
Okay.
and he does have a book, but it's not like it's this mitochondria. It's basically a book of research.
Okay.
So I've studied a lot of this, which is
Okay.
not for like the everyday
No.
reader. But yeah, he doesn't have, other than just listening to his lectures online and then
Okay.
studying that book. And it's actually a very expensive, I think it's like $250 for that book
Oh,
of
wow. Okay.
research. It's more like a textbook, really.
Yeah. Wow. Good for you. Well done.
Well, I have lots to learn. I'm not even close to done, so stay tuned.
Okay. Well, oh my gosh. Okay. Would you call the work that you do mitochondrial medicine? Is that the term?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
That's,
Yeah.
my whole mission is to teach mitochondrial medicine to patients that are interested in being their own doctor and
Mhm.
practitioners that are interested in incorporating mitochondrial medicine into their practice. I believe I truly believe that it is like the biggest missing link in allopathic medicine, I think, is kind of a hopeless cause at this point, but even functional medicine, like we've still adopted this very like mechanistic model to
Right.
functional medicine.
Where you test and you see deficiencies, and then you just go, okay, well, you're low in zinc, we'll give you zinc, low in magnesium, we'll give you magnesium, and then you retest again and they look better, and then a few months down the road, patient stops taking it and retesting it. Oh, you have to go back on zinc. That's what might have been a bit of my experience with it.
Yeah, that's I would say 99.5% of the practitioners out there. I will say that Dr. Hoffman doesn't practice. He definitely uses supplements. I don't want to say he doesn't use supplements,
Mhm.
because there is an aspect, and I'm not against supplement use.
Okay.
I think that there's an aspect of needing to restore biochemistry when we have completely destroyed our health, that we can lean into using some of these targeted nutraceuticals to help get the health cycle restored. Speaking of the cell danger response that we never even went back to, because that is part of Navio's work, and clinically working with Bruce, I've seen that in spades. Like there's a time and a place for giving these people, again, this is like an accumulation of years and years and sometimes decades of people completely abusing their health. And so the idea that all of a sudden we can just switch that off by going outside and seeing the sunrise and grounding, and a lot of these, obviously I'm really dumbing down quantum biology, that's not the extent of it, but that whole idea is, I don't subscribe to that. Like I really do see value in supporting these people for a period of time. It's like understanding that we don't stay on these things for years and years and spend thousands of dollars on supplements a month. Like that's not the recipe for healing.
No.
That's not the recipe for longevity. But there is a time and a place for some of these things. So that when we look at the health cycle and the cell danger response. So to go back to your question about the cell danger response, this is a metabolically conserved evolutionary response where the mitochondria, when the allostatic load is going to exceed their ability to maintain homeostasis, they're going to enter what we call the cell danger response. And there's many characteristics of the cell danger response in terms of metabolic changes, in terms of the changes within the membrane. And ultimately, cells stop communicating with one another. They try to contain that threat. And in doing that, we see all these symptoms manifest, right? And so when you think about things like mast cell activation syndrome or autoimmune disease, ultimately, this has changed my whole perspective on medicine, because it doesn't matter the disease. It doesn't matter what the diagnosis is.
Yes.
the treatment, the support for healing is the same. It's the same. And so when we understand that, and you know that roadmap, and you can implement that with every single patient that you work with, and then of course you need to know, some of these other specific therapies that we can use to leverage someone's health even more. But the restoration of the cell danger response, that health cycle, restoring it, is foundational. I mean, Robert Navio's work has really, really transformed the way that I think about illness and the way that I think about healing.
I need to learn more about it. I've heard of him. I've heard of the cell danger response, but again, is it courses or does he have a book that we could read?
He has. So again, I've been so lucky to learn so much from Bruce clinically.
Right.
And so I kind of feel like I have this like encyclopedia in my back pocket. Anytime I have a question or need to understand something, he's so good at explaining it to me. Robert Navio's stuff, it's his paper that I've studied. And then it's his paper combined with, watching clinically how that translates. That's really helped me to understand. And we've built, like, I have a whole lecture on the cell danger response that I teach. And it's not everything that I teach isn't steeped in Navio's paper. Like, we clinically, I've been able to see, some of these other things that work. And so I brought that into that kind of equation as well. But basically, it's the state in which your cell is going to enter when we have all of these life's downloads. So when we think about living in a soup of EMFs, people that are sleeping with their cell phone beside their bed, and these crazy things that people do, like, these are danger signals. And your mitochondria, because of their ability to act as these, whatever you want to call them, electromagnetic sensors, I like to refer to them as our sixth sense. So
yes,
reminding people that just like we can see and we can taste and we can touch and we can hear and we can feel, our mitochondria at the same time are always surveying our environment. And if they perceive that the environment is unsafe, they are going to shut down and enter that state of the cell.
And that could be emotional trauma too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or blue light or a chemical in the environment, glyphosate, things like that, right?
I have a whole slide on like all of the life's downloads that we're exposed to. So yeah, it can be trauma too. That's why like head injury is going to put somebody in that state of a cell danger response.
Right.
So yeah, it's psychological stress. It's all of these things that are going to make our mitochondria perceive that things are not safe.
When the cell goes into that response, is it dying? What happens? Or is it just sending out signaling that's like a constant alarm system that's going off? And then we have all these alarm systems going, like, kind of explain that a little bit.
So yeah, I love that actually analogy. Yes, the alarm systems are going off initially, alarm systems, inflammatory signals. There's so many things that are associated with the cell danger response. And if you stay stuck in it, yes, cell death results. So the goal is and there's different stages. So there's CDR1, there's CDR2, and there's CDR3. And so the goal is to move people through those stages. If all things go well, that's the natural process. You move through those stages and you get back to health. And then there's specific characteristics that are associated with each one of those stages. And so in CDR1 is like, if you think about a highly sensitive patient, someone that's like reactive to everything, someone that has really low resilience, any little stressor puts them into like an emotional, roller coaster. They break down. They are sensitive to all these different foods. They can't take specific supplements like that. Those are all like classic signs of CDR1. When you start to provide the body with the salugenesis, these healing inputs that it needs for the mitochondria to perceive, okay, we're safe. It's safe to restore the healing cycle. Then once you move to CDR2, you're going to see as a practitioner, patients, when someone's in that state, because all of a sudden they're more resilient, they're less sensitive to things, they have more energy, like there's lots of symptom improvement. But we don't want to stop there, right? We have to make sure. That's why the cell danger response is not about like a treatment protocol that you go on. This is about understanding how we want to live and breathe and move in the world today so that we can continue, if we do get stuck in CDR1, that we have all the tools that we need to know how to restore that health cycle, and ultimately to know my body's in an environment that is not safe. So whether that's, and this is where the electromagnetic frequency, I could go on like so many tangents from here.
I
This
know.
is where it's like, I have worked with people. I worked with the most beautiful woman. I'm still actually working with her now. She's such a doll, but she was so sick, and she was so open. She was such an amazing advocate for her own health. She was doing all the things. And it's not common for me to work with someone like that doesn't get their health back, doesn't get back to a level where they're like, I have never felt this well in my life.
Mhm.
And so I was super confused by it. And I had said on one of our calls, I said, can you send me the building biologist report of your home? Because something is not right. We're missing something. And she said, oh, I actually haven't had the building biologist come in yet. And so right away, I'm thinking, how did I miss that? I've worked with this person for like 6 months. You know, I always recommended it on my very like first or second call. And so sure enough, she has a building biologist that we use come into her house and do an assessment. And she has an electrical current behind her bed that is in the carcinogenic range
Oh,
that can't be mitigated. The only option was for her to move. She has moved. She has no symptoms, zero. Within 1 week of being in that house, she is like, for a decade, I suffered every single day of my life
I have a
with
friend.
fog, with fatigue, with
Yeah.
like no appetite, with like just the list was so long. After
Mhm.
1 week, she's like, yeah, I don't have any symptoms anymore. We just moved. I'm sleeping in the new.
I have a colleague who's been suffering years and years and has tried everything and had the building biologist come in, and there's a power line in her back garden. And we've all been saying, you need to try, like, could you move? Could you move? And I hope she'll hear this. This is great.
Well, you
Hopefully
know,
this
it's
will help.
and I feel for people because again, she is like in the 1 or 2% of individuals that are like, I
Yes.
will do anything to get my health. And her husband was super supportive. And so she had so many cards stacked for her. And that is a great thing. Because, you know, there's a lot of people that I've worked with they're suffering. And I know that it's the house they're in. And I say, you got to get out of that house. And they're like, no, I can't. My husband's job is here.
Yeah.
We love our house. So it's like, okay, so you're choosing with love. I'm telling you that you're choosing to stay sick because
Mhm.
nothing that I can do, there's no recommendations that I can make for you that are going to mitigate your body being in a toxic environment where your mitochondria refuse to return to normal metabolism.
And
Nothing.
that's with the body bio oil, which I want to get back to, and all like what you would call lipid replacement therapy, where you're taking in good fats and helping the cell membranes, helping the membranes of the mitochondria, and it's still not enough.
So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, we can't that again, that this is like the idea that we have that we can just take something that's going to mitigate, you know, all
Right.
of these essential things that we have to make sure
Right.
that we have in order. So I'm not diminishing the power of phospholipids and essential
Mhm.
fatty acids. And I'm also saying, and they have been, I mean, I've worked with many people that start on lipid replacement therapy. And when that term is basically just a term used for using exogenous phospholipids and fatty acids to
Right.
support the restoration of our membranes or the maintenance of our membranes. And so I've definitely worked with people that are still in a bad environment that start taking these lipids that feel enormously better. So I definitely think that you can get gains because again, it's going back to, I feel like a broken record, but it's going back to just understanding the importance of giving your body these essential nutrients that it needs. So if you're depleted in them
Right.
and you provide those for your body, there's going to be so much more healing that can occur with
Mhm.
those than without. And I will also say that that's not a silver bullet to optimal health, right? There's lots of other things that we have to do as well.
Mhm.
And that's where the education piece comes into play for me. And again, just going back to a piece that I feel is really missing because I think a lot of patients are misled and by practitioners who I'm sure have very good intentions, but they believe that taking the parasite cleanse or doing the mold detoxification protocol or doing their 40 sessions of hyperbaric oxygen or whatever it is what they need to get better. And that is a lie.
A half truth that's a lie, right? A full lie. There's positives to it, but it's not enough. Yeah. Thank you
Well,
for saying that.
I'll push back on that too, because
Okay.
positives to being on a mold protocol where you have completely depleted all of your phospholipids and your fatty acids, and a practitioner puts you on cholestyramine, not beneficial.
No.
You've just injured a patient even more.
Oh, interesting.
So that, again,
Education.
yeah, it's just education when people know these things, because again, a lot of these people that are trained, and again, there's no disrespect whatsoever. I know we all have our, own area of expertise. And if somebody has taken like the shoemaker protocol and they've studied that and they think, oh, okay, all we have to do is give someone cholestyramine and, these peptides and high dose fish oil, and do the mold testing and some of these visual contrast tests, then that's all, that's what we need to do. But it's completely missing that your body, when you give your body the things that it needs to restore the structure and the function of the membrane, to restore mitochondrial functioning, detoxification is a result of improving redox potential. So it's just disrespecting, I think, the body's innate ability to heal and do these things on its own. We think that we have the solution from an outside source. And again, I'm not saying that there are definitely some of these things that we can use that people find very helpful. But it's also, I think, having like reverence for the body and having reverence for the fact that we really don't know very much about the body when it comes down to like bare bones. And that's where, you can send somebody for hyperbaric oxygen therapy and they feel so much better. And you can also send people for hyperbaric oxygen therapy that end up getting extremely sick. So,
and you've done harm.
You're playing a bit of Russian roulette with a lot of these things, even if even people that are highly trained. So that's basically why I stick to educating on the foundations that we know the human body needs. And you can't go wrong with those things. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure how much time we have. We wanted to talk to you a bit about food, just so that we can get the listeners to see if is there ways they can help the cell membranes, the cardiolipin that's in that inner mitochondrial membrane. Can we do it with food? And we see people, doing all these diets, extreme diets like carnivore diet, keto diet. I did the medical medium diet, did that for a couple of years. I did the alkaline diet. And I was doing some research listening to some of your other podcasts, and I'm like, oh, okay, that one had too many saturated fatty acids. That one had too many, of this kind. And I'm like, oh, now it makes sense why that might have been good for a while because it brought me back to balance, but it was not, good. I know for many other reasons, but from a quantum perspective. But can you fully do this with food? Can you repair without, or do you think we need is it helpful to have a supplement like this? I know you're specialized in the body bio, where they have these two oils, I think, a balance oil and phosphate.
Yeah,
Can you tell us about
actually
that?
a phospholipid complex. I have
Complex.
never seen somebody. So I first want to say I wouldn't even put the body bio phospholipid complex and the balance oil in the category of supplements.
Okay.
So I like to kind of differentiate that so that people understand, because I think supplements are viewed through kind of a lens of, oh, we take these to support this specific thing and we take them for a period of time and then we don't need them anymore. These are truly essential nutrients. And the phospholipid complex from Body Bio is derived from whole food, and it's pure phospholipids. So these are providing your body with the exact materials that you need. So you're going to take those are going to absorb in the small intestine, go into the bloodstream, into the lymphatic system, and go directly to repairing membranes.
Okay.
That, living in the world today, I think is a non-negotiable. I've never seen an individual restore their health, repair mitochondrial function, remove intracellular toxins, remove DNA adducts. So those are toxins that are covalently bonded to our DNA by whole food. Do I think that if somebody was living on the equator, spending 2 hours on the beach every day, swimming in the ocean, eating fresh seafood, making sure that they are, getting in lots of egg yolks and, really organ meats, like really, really knowledgeable about specific essential nutrients that the body needs and how we can optimize those from whole food, I think that we can easily maintain health if we're in the right environment and we're eating that way. I just have never seen anybody get back their health when they've lost reserve capacity using whole food. And just to give you an example, Laura, an egg yolk, which is an excellent source of phosphatidylcholine, it is going to contain roughly between 80 and 100 milligrams of phosphatidylcholine per yolk. Half a teaspoon of the body biophospholipid complex contains 1,300 milligrams of phospholipids.
Oh, wow.
And when we're using therapeutic doses of the phospholipid complex, practitioners often will recommend up to 3 tablespoons of the PC from Body Bio.
Oh my gosh.
I'm really happy you just said that you don't see these as supplements, because I don't like the S word. I know that lots of supplements, they're full of deuterium. And so whenever I'm working with someone, I'm always like, I had someone ask me the other day about functional medicine. I just tried to share because a lot of times functional medicine doctors, they don't have this quantum lens, and they're putting, like how you were saying earlier, Laura, oh, you're low in this, we give you that kind of approach, and just spending lots of money on labs. And so, yeah, I think I have a lot to learn from you, but I only like whole food supplements. And I don't like saying that word supplement, because I like to differentiate those other supplements. In fact, plumbers are seeing, like, people who take a lot of supplements, it plugs up people's water line in their home because they're flushing their toilet and all the supplements are just going down the toilet. And because of the coating on they're just plugging up. Like, I think it's just people just think they can take a pill for whatever is wrong. And so they find out what's wrong, and they're like, oh, well, so-and-so said I should take this. And so I guess my question to you is, is there a way that we would know if something was high in deuterium when it is in that more supplement category, opposed to, not what we're talking about, which is whole food supplementation?
No, not unless the company is testing, except you will have a good idea if anything's in a gel cap, right? Because gelatin is like crazy high in deuterium.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
So anything in a gel, and also the glyphosate, you wanna be just aware. I mean, and I don't think that if somebody is taking a couple of capsules of evening primrose oil, that's gonna be I still bite into them and spit out the gel cap because I'm just that way. But I don't think that necessarily if someone's taking a couple gel caps on a daily basis, that's going to play a huge role in deuterium accumulating in the body. And I also don't know that for sure, right?
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes honestly, with the deuterium conversation, I think we have to really educate people on, it's not as simple as like, just don't take supplements and you're going to lower your deuterium, or just taking supplements is going to contribute to your deuterium load in the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, first of all, we have so many steps within the mitochondria that are screening for deuterium not getting in to the electron transport chain. And also, or that the inner mitochondrial matrix or the inner membrane. And
Mm-hmm.
we also, deuterium people, if someone's eating a vegetarian diet, if they're living off grains and beans and legumes and drinking 155 parts per million water, and they're drinking 4 liters of water every day, and they're not sweating and they're not going outside and they're living under blue light, like, these are bigger issues, right, that we need to educate.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I mean, of course, sounds like this is all of our goal, to really help people to understand that as attractive as it may be to reach for a supplement and buy into those claims that the company has made about this curing X, Y, and Z, or, however most companies don't use cure because that's a very charged word by the FDA, but we supporting whatever symptoms. And it's easier, right? To just reach for something instead of actually doing the hard work that's required to truly heal. And so I think a lot of this just comes back to education. But with the deuterium stuff, the oils, so the Body Bio Balance oil as much as people say that seed oils are high in deuterium, it's the processing of those seed oils that's going to create high levels of deuterium. So a cold pressed seed oil is not going to be high, even if it's, rich in these polyunsaturated fatty acids, it's not necessarily going to be high in deuterium.
Okay.
Fats are pretty low in deuterium. And same with the phospholipids. These are low deuterium foods. And I do recommend from Body Bio the liquid forms, just because I mentioned the dosing, that we don't want to be taking like 12, you need 12 of the gel caps of the PC to equal 1 tablespoon. And so we don't want to be taking 12 gel caps when we can take a liquid version.
Exactly. All right. I want to be mindful of your time here. So yeah, Laura, were you going to ask something?
Oh, I've got a whole bunch more, but I don't think we have the time. We need to get you back.
We're going to get you back.
Yeah, I've got quantum nutrition, a ton of quantum nutrition questions. I think would be a fun episode to do with you, to get into your thoughts on oxalates and histamine intolerance and just some like others. Yeah, just more on fats, way more we could do on fats and eating fish, and maybe some of the more practical, because I know, like, you answered the question saying we can't do it fully through food, but I like you did say earlier, you've seen people changing their diet, change their trajectory of their health. So we know that food plays a role, and also would love to talk to you about leptin, because I know you're diving into that as well. So maybe we should. So sorry.
Yeah, no, first of all, I'd love to be back. And also, Laura, I just want to confirm that or clarify that when I'm changing someone's diet, I'm implementing the phospholipids and fatty acids.
I knew it. Yeah, I knew it. Right.
So that goes along with the dietary changes that as a pair.
Yeah. Because it's a whole food supplement.
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued by it. It's new to me, Justine. I don't know about you, Andia, but I'm definitely going to be looking into this, because I've just took on a client who's got serious health issues. So yeah, and we're always learning. We may have a great protocol, but you've got to keep bringing things in. And like you say, the toxins are so high in our environment. We have to work harder as quantum clinicians to help everybody, including ourselves.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're doing an amazing job. And I think so much of it, I mean, I love that you're educating about EMFs, because it's really, I really love helping people to understand that your detox potential is a direct, correlation to your redox potential.
Oh, I
So
love that. Yeah.
if you're doing things that are depleting, you're impairing redox, then yeah, you're definitely going to have impaired detoxification, gonna be a result of that. So I'm the biggest believer. And speaking of detoxification, I didn't even say that the body biophospholipid, these phospholipids are like our most powerful tool for detoxification. When we look at some of the qualities of phospholipids and the relationship to detoxification, so first of all, our liver cell membranes are about 70% phosphatidylcholine on the outer membrane. So if we have a breakdown of phosphatidylcholine on that outer membrane, we're not going to be able to support, we're not going to have healthy detoxification. So it's helping through that mechanism. It's also the main component of bile. So bile is comprised of choline, cholesterol. We also have the bile salts, electrolytes. And phosphatidylcholine, if we have a depletion in that, we're not going to be able to make adequate amounts of bile. It's also supporting the gallbladder cells. And so we can support the gallbladder through supplementation. And the epithelial cells that make up your gut mucosa, they are 90% phosphatidylcholine. So we are literally supporting like that whole process. And then we also have, these characteristics of PC because of the molecule. It's actually it has a hydrophilic head and hydrophobic tails, and it can actually wrap itself around these fat soluble toxins and remove them from the body. So that's where you see really cool benefits around using PC when it comes to clearing out these intracellular toxins. And I'd mentioned those DNA adducts. And that was really what got me so excited about the phospholipid complex and wanting to learn more about it, because I thought, why? We talk so much about detoxification and how important detoxification is. And we're using all of these like things to help support phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. And why isn't anyone talking about phospholipids? These essential nutrients. Like, why? It's just, so that was one of the reasons why I was like so intrigued to learn more.
I've done liver cleanses like week long with medical medium, and I think about the stuff that I did with spinach soups and and all this fruit, and I think, oh my God, it would have been so much easier. That was effective anyways. But
Speaking of fruit and spinach, and put on your list, because I meant to talk about this when we talk about nutrition, when I was referring to the cell danger response or speaking to the cell danger response, because we do have, two different types of metabolism that are required for healthy mitochondrial function and mitochondrial longevity. And so remind me to talk about AMPK and mTOR and how that ties into the cell danger response.
Okay, we got that. That is going to be
so excited to have you back. Okay, so to end this episode, just want to thank you so much, and opening this conversation about phospholipids is just, I'm mind blown today. What would you say at this point in time does quantum healthy mean to you?
Oh, you told me to think about this question over the course of the call, and I did not think about it once. I would say that quantum healthy is waking up every day and feeling inspired to take on the day. And of course, that's not going to happen every day, but I really see a shift in so many of the people that I work with when they start getting the right light exposure. They start giving their body what they need, that all of a sudden their creativity and their inspiration and their vitality just for life comes back.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Love it. Oh,
Thank
beautiful.
you.
How can people find you, Justine? I know you're on Instagram, and we haven't talked about this, but you've been doing like daily little short videos that have been really powerful. So everybody who's, a fan of Instagram, go over and check out Justine. I don't know what your handle
Really
is
good
there.
channel.
Yeah, what is your handle there?
So it's Justine Cellular Nutrition on Instagram.
Okay.
And my website is justinestenger.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions about Body Bio as well if you ping me on Instagram. And then Body Bio's website is bodybio.com, where you can find their amazing phospholipid complex and their balance oil, and their handle is at Body Bio as well. And yeah, that's I'm most active on Instagram right now. I'm really trying to branch out so that's not my only platform, but right now that's where you'll find me. And I do post almost every day. So
awesome.
Okay. Well, just quick thank you, first of all, for giving us homework, because we've got to go look up more on the cell danger response and Robert Navio's work, and actually Robert Hoffman's work as well. And just new vocabulary. We learned a new word, salugenesis. And thank you for just all the studying that you've done and continuing that to help just people find, and practitioners to help us too, what's at the root to get people well. And that's, I really think, mitochondrial medicine and this lipid replacement therapy, and just walking your talk, Justine, and not sugarcoating anything. You're a champion in our view.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was very fun.
Yes. Thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Quantum Healthy podcast. We hope you found some value in this information. And if you feel inspired, please share it and leave us a 5-star review. This will help us reach so many more people. If you want to connect with Laura, you can find her at laurakismanwellness.com and Andia at andiaray.com. Links are below in the show notes. Now, go find some sunlight and embrace your own quantum healthy.